When I think of this moment in time in education in the world and in the United States, I'm not a huge fan of haikus, but this is a haiku that I love a whole lot, that I discovered several years ago. And I find myself kind of saying this to myself as I have conversations with teachers and go and observe student teachers and talk with educational professionals. I think it really captures our moment. Barns burnt down, but now I can see the moon. And so if we look at that, the barn, these are some statistics, and there are many, but these are some statistics that kind of provide evidence of the barn. So we are at academic year 3 of the number of academic years affected by COVID. 1.5 million student enrollment decline in public schools since the start of the pandemic. That 3,585 is the number of vacant or unqualified full-time educator vacancies in the state of Missouri. 21% increase in the number of fights in fall 21. This is from Denver Public Schools, so reporting about their district. 24% increase in proportion of 5 to 11-year-olds visiting an emergency room due to a mental health crisis. And you see at the bottom, those teachers that are involved, right? 90% of teacher survey respondents identifying burnout as a somewhat serious or very serious issue. And 90% of teacher survey respondents reporting a loss of learning by their students. The barn is on fire, and there's some serious crises that are happening in today's schools. But we also have at the same time educators in the news. And so this is from the CBS Evening News. I looked at the month of March, starting at the beginning of the month, and then I just listed, these are the names of all of the news stories on the CBS Evening News, every third item. So you can see this doesn't really inspire people to want to come to the field of education, right? We have teachers speaking out against Florida legislation. We have a teacher being killed. We have teachers striking. We have teachers, fighting about mask mandates. Teachers charged with crimes. This does not paint a very rosy picture for us in our profession. But at the same time, we actually do have the moon. As teachers, we go into the field because we are inspirational, sort of aspirational people who want to make a difference. And so this is a report from the Christensen Institute, which is a think tank institute that is focused on disruption in a lot of social science arenas, including education. And so what you see here is actually some of the wonderful pedagogical shifts that have taken place and that have been built literally as the pandemic is happening. So we have staffing model changes. We have thinking through mental health supports, enrichment opportunities, changes in pedagogical approaches, looking at supports for the whole family. And so those have increased. I encourage you to take a look at this report. It's actually, when you're feeling sad, this is a really inspiring report. And again, this represents kind of building the plane as we've been flying it in this moment. I want to turn for a second to Dr. Mechem, who is going to also give us some insights from her kind of frontline position in her district. And so, Roxanna, I'm going to turn it to you, and you just tell me when to advance the slides.
Sure. So everything that you heard Stephanie say is absolutely true. We have spent the last 3 years reinventing school and doing a heavy lift on the fly. And so part of our work is not only to do that work, but to monitor and reflect and collect data on what's actually happening. We just had the opportunity to do that this spring with a stakeholder group of parents and staff members. So if you want to advance the slide, I thought that what I could add to the conversation is just really what we're seeing. And so it was very interesting in our surveys of both families and teachers The number one identified need coming out of the pandemic was actually social emotional needs of students. Both parents and staff members are expressing a large degree of stress and anxiety that they're noticing in students, along with a lack of socialization and just a need to reacclimate to what collaboration looks like with peers. And then we do also understand that it disproportionately impacted some students in terms of academics. So we actually had some students who flourished during the pandemic and during virtual learning, and then other students that almost completely dropped off the radar, that have, just huge gaps in what was provided to them simply for attendance issues, if not for the struggle of using online resources. For us, our ESSER funding that we received, and school districts are receiving quite a lot of ESSER funding. For us, our priority was to provide enough staffing so that we could accelerate learning for students that had those gaps, put extra bodies in the buildings to make sure that we had social emotional support for kids. So we added TAs. We also added permanent subs to try to help with the COVID and the quarantining and isolation situations that were happening with students and adults. Our parents were very vocal with us that they wanted a safe on-campus experience. So figuring out mitigation measures and which ones work and following the changing science has been a huge lift for us the last few years, as well as all of the things that we're doing on the learning side of the house. And then the bottom two bullets are the hardest to describe and perhaps the most important. And so that is creating a sense of normalcy and belonging in whatever learning model we found ourselves. So whether that was virtual, hybrid, or fully back in person now, how do we help all of the individual students feel like they are a part of something, and not just that they're there, but that they literally belong and that they're seen and they're heard? If you would transition the slide. And so we instituted a variety of strategies to try to get that done. We repurposed our preschool teachers, which was closed for a time, to be able to do flexible small group instruction and one-on-one instruction with our earliest learners in grades K1 and 2. We reinvented intervention groups. And so sometimes it's push in so that they're on grade level with the class with extra support there with them. And sometimes it's pull out. But for students that have severe learning loss, they can't be out of class all the time. So we're reinventing what those structures look like. We've repurposed advisory time. We have created special targeted study halls so that kids can get peer support and other adult support in some downtime in the secondary day. We've added counselors and social workers and created and continued a wide variety of partnerships of external partners that can help meet the social emotional needs for students.
Next.
Yes, please. Thank you. And so, for us, this sense of belonging, we heard loud and clear from families what students were feeling. And so we have provided a variety of check-in meetings, including online, in-person, meet at the park, outdoors, if you name it. We probably creatively tried to figure out how to get that done. We extended advisory time and time for social emotional learning at the beginning of school, go slow to go fast kind of idea. We had family back to school meetings. We had family tours in a safe environment so that kids that transition could actually see the building they were going to, even if they weren't there yet. We continued our home visiting programs, instituted a number of class building and team building strategies in the classroom beyond what we would normally do. We have SEL check-ins with the social workers and counselors, as well as having special social emotional classrooms in each building so that students that are dysregulated can go to a fully certified teacher and continue on grade level learning in a special environment. We call them chill zones, that are designed to de-escalate and help kids re-regulate so that they can rejoin their classes. And so a lot of things and a lot of time and energy has been put into an aspect that pre-pandemic perhaps would not have been as firmly on the radar as the needs that we've seen coming back to school. I don't know if I have another slide. Yep, one more, I thought. So, what did we hear about how we did? Parents were generally very satisfied with the mitigation measures. We've been very careful to follow the science here at MRH. However, our children under 5 are still not vaccinated. So there's some concern about preschool spaces and how we make sure to continue with mitigation measures when the rest of the world seems to be relaxing. Progress monitoring and assessment has been critically important to us, and finding ways to do that get us information about kids to let us educate but aren't egregious for teachers or students. Parents also mentioned that they are wanting to be welcome back to spaces and that they are feeling somewhat apprehensive because they haven't been on campus with us for 3 years or more, as well as mentioning they have communication fatigue. So they want to hear from us, but they have Zoom fatigue, they have email fatigue. And so really rethinking how we engage with parents when they need more information than they've ever needed, but they're also very tired as are our teachers, is a problem that we are currently trying to think our way through. I mentioned that we have provided a lot of extra bodies in the building, some of which will continue even into next year because they've been super helpful. And then one thing that I heard you mention, Stephanie, that I think all schools in the region are experiencing, we have a staff shortage. So you're aware of the teacher shortage, but many school districts, in fact, most school districts don't have enough bus drivers to operate our buses. We're down to 3 or 4 drivers for the entire district. We can't find food service workers. And so we have a lot of staff members who are flexing into the kitchens to make sure that kids are fed. And we can't find before or after care workers. So there is I think, national shortage in those areas as well. And, I know we all look to teachers and teacher preparation is absolutely essential, but schools are really experiencing a staffing shortage at critical levels in almost every area.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that information and all your wonderful work. I think, administrators on the front line, I hope that by the end of your academic year, you might be able to go and take a big long nap for maybe a week. It's really incredible all that administrators have to do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to segue to my friend and colleague, Dr. Nicole Lee Johnson, who is going to kind of carry us through the rest of the presentation and some of the logistics as we prepare for the breakout rooms.
Thank you, Stephanie. So as you see on the slide, and like Stephanie talked about, I think our programs, we have a strong identity in educating for the what we need in the future, and also having this revolutionary mindset for teachers, so that, and we model that at the School of Education as well. So some of these what ifs, that you see on the screen would give you some ideas, to inspire you to think about what other things can I think about to change, And so because of time, I would just talk about 3. So I picked the green box first. So the green box talks about school systems being designed to incentivize educator collaboration, inquiry, and innovation. And then, so, can we think of ways to incentivize teachers and educators? Like Stephanie was recently interviewed by the TV channel about shortage of teachers. What can we think about in the system that can help us incentivize more people to want to become educators? The orange box talks about schools, being the hubs of whole community centers designed to support the whole student and their family. So, in the past, we have seen a lot of the school districts trying to do a lot of great things, such as having a lot of community built among the families and the teachers and also the administrators, so that they can come together and learn from each other. Is it possible that we can reimagine some space within the school and campuses, or do we take that outside of the school buildings? What are the best way to engage families and support their families at the same time? And then I also picked the yellow box that says a range of instructional modalities. So with COVID challenges, we have all been adjusting really fast to teach on screen using Zoom, using other technological tools. But then at the other hand, we're also being challenged to ask the question of, so am I making the best choice for the highest possible quality of pedagogical practices? What are the best way to teach a certain topic with a certain method or certain practical strategies? So those are the things that we constantly ask ourselves. So I think with these challenges that exist in the system and also in the context, we challenge ourselves as educators to constantly reflect upon these things that happen and to create new ways to engage our learners and to make the teaching fun, engaging, equitable, and also pedagogically sound. Thank you, Stephanie. Next slide. So this quote Stephanie found, I loved it. So it talks about the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones, and it's from Confucius. So, I think this is the spirit that we want to inspire all of the educators nowadays to think about, how to see the moon. Before we can reach to the moon, maybe we need to take small steps, baby steps, and to create community, just like what we're doing now, through these briefings that we're talking about teaching at the Crossroads. But then how can we come together and then join our forces and create incentives and initiatives so that we can eventually move the mountain and solve the problems and create better learning opportunities for all of our learners. So that is the challenge. And thank you, Stephanie.